The Champaign County Board Committee of the Whole at 6:30. We're meeting for Finance, Policy, Personnel and Appointments, and Justice and Social Services. It's Tuesday, October 9th of 2018. Roll call, please.
Summers. Here. Tinsley. Vachaspati. Here. Anderson. Here. Clemens. Clifford. Here. Cowart. Douglas. Eisenman. Here. Esri. Furtado. Here. Goss.
Here.
Harper. McGuire. Here. Mitchell. Patterson. Petrie.
Present.
Quisenberry. Rector. Here. Rosales.
Here.
Storr. Here. Weibel.
Present. We have a quorum. For the agenda, we're going to remove Finance E5, which is not ready. So Finance E5, we're going to remove completely. The contract and the budget resolution. Hopefully, we'll have that ready for the county board meeting. With that change, I'm going to seek approval of the agenda and any addenda. Moved by Mr. McGuire, second by Mr. Goss. Discussion. See none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries. I seek an omnibus motion to approve the minutes of the legislative budget hearings of August 27th, 2018 and August 28th, 2018, as well as the committee of the whole meeting of September 11th, 2018. Moved by Mr. Rosales, second by Mr. Summers. Discussion. See none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Public participation. Is there any public participation at this time? Seeing none, let's move on to communications from board members. Any communications? Ms. Petrie.
Thank you. I want to take a moment to offer a tip of the hat to the Circuit Clerk's office, Katie Blakeman, Brian, all of their staff, the volunteers, our own IT staff that spent long hours on Saturday and many hours preceding that to set up and run the third annual expungement and hearing, I forgot, what's the second description of that? Expungement summit, there's another part to it. Sorry, I'm forgetting that right now. It was very impressive, as it has been the past 2 years. They had 213 residents sign up for this. They didn't know if that would be the final number or not. By the time I was there, they still were seeing clients, so they didn't have that final total, but it was a huge success, and I think we should acknowledge that group of people who worked very hard and all of the attorneys who volunteered to work that day.
Any other communications? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to Justice and Social Services. Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, we have all the reports: Animal Control, Emergency Management Agency, Head Start, Public Defender, Probation and Court Services, Veterans Assistance, and they're all on file. We'll place all those on file unless there's questions. Nope. Okay, thanks. Court Services and Probation, and 7B, which is the FY 2019 Annual Probation Plan, which is available on the department web page online for those that are interested. Thank you. And then we have the sheriff's request for approval of an intergovernment agreement with the City of Champaign, the City of Urbana, and Champaign County for the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant JAG program, which I'll need a motion to move. Mr. Rector moved. Mr. Anderson is second. Is there any discussion? Thank you, Pius. What can you?
There's a question at the Democratic caucus about why Urbana is not participating, and I talked to the sheriff about that, so this is anecdotal. Obviously, I did not talk to somebody from Urbana, but apparently it would conflict with Urbana's sanctuary city status. So that's why Urbana has declined to participate. although their money is going towards the community, so not like its money is lost.
Okay, great. I kind of wondered the same question, so I appreciate that. So, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No opposed. The motion passes. Other business? Chair's report. We did go to the reentry meeting, Pius and myself, and there was a lot of discussion about the new reentry program for the 18 to 24-year-olds that RPC has, and it's kind of consolidation with our own reentry program and making sure that there wasn't duplicative work. Also, David Northern was there from Housing Authority and talked about some their ability to help in those with that program and some of the job training that they would do. Seems like throughout the community there's some working together with a lot of different organizations, including Rosecrans, on those programs, which was good to hear. I don't know if Pius wants to add anything about that, but there was a good meeting.
Know that there certainly is a concerted effort to try to duplicate, to avoid duplication, try to make the most efficient use of the monies out there for these programs. So it was a good start, I think.
That's right, thank you. The designated items to place on the consent agenda, 7C would be the only thing, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. Let's go on to policy, personnel, and appointments. Mr. Rosales.
Okay, 8A, we have actually two appointments, Rural Transit Advisory Group, Pius.
I move the appointment of Mr. Kyle Schartzer.
All those in favor? Discussion? Discussion?
Sorry, this
Bobby?
is just, since I'm new here, these are the only people, this is the only person who applied to this as well?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. 8A2, Lincoln Legacy Committee, Pius.
I nominate Brendan Belcher for unexpired term ending February 28th, 2019.
Okay, discussion? Moved by Pius, second. Okay, Patsy?
I have a clarification question. The first one that we voted on, the term ends on the December of 2019, yet the unexpired term is ending on February 2019. Why that differential?
I'd have to check with Zoe, I think.
Okay.
I can't answer that. I will do that by we'll make sure, we'll put it on the, make sure it's not on the consent agenda, and we'll straighten it out by the county board
Okay,
meeting.
that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. County clerks, he's not here, but I asked that we place his report on file. And then county administrator, which is 8C. Deb?
The Administrative Services Monthly Report be placed on file.
And we ask that this report also be placed on file.
Then the second item is a Job Content Evaluation Committee recommendation for the planner position for Planning and Zoning Department. The committee met and reviewed the position based on the input from Mr. Hall and the evaluation by the committee of the responsibilities and experience and expertise required for this position. The recommendation is to classify it in grade range, and I got to get to that page, sorry. Grade range J, which places it immediately below the senior planner in the Planning and Zoning Department, and 2 grades above the associate planner, which is basically an entry-level position. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I'm asking the Policy Committee to forward this to the Finance Committee for approval.
Okay, moved by Esri, second by Clifford. Discussion, Patsy?
I see John Hall is here. Could I ask him a couple of questions, please? Hi, John. Hi. The focus of my question is something that I wanted to make certain you are comfortable with, and that is there's quite a lot of defined duties in this description for this position. There's one last sentence that is the only one I read that offers much flexibility in case you needed to pull somebody, in to do some other work and things like that. Are you comfortable with that? Is that sufficient flexibility for this position for the rest of the things that go on in your office?
I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. Yes, Stephanie?
Just for clarification from finance, this position is already budgeted in the 2019 budget, correct?
That's correct.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. 8D, seek approval of the county board rules.
No, actually, we're on the next job content evaluation committee recommendation for the accountant position for the highway department. And again, the committee met and reviewed the information that had been presented and prepared by Mr. Blue. Also met with Mr. Blue to discuss how this position has changed and evolved since it was last evaluated. And there is a considerable amount of new responsibility that has been added to this position since its last evaluation. And based on that, the recommendation of the committee is to upgrade or reclassify this position from grade range H to grade range I, to change the title of the position from simply accountant to office manager accountant for the highway department. And the job description is also included, just for your information.
Okay, moved by Patsy. Could I get a second? Store? Second by Store. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is the county's travel policy. And I did put an updated version of that at your desks tonight. There were a couple additional changes from the one that was in your packet. Those changes are actually on page 1. So the review of this travel policy came about for 2 reasons. First of all, from a request that we consider a policy where we would make a commitment to flying local when it's possible. And so that is the section that has been added basically on pages 2 and 3 of the policy. It's a new section called the Fly Local Policy. Most of our departments and elected officials are already doing this when someone is flying for business on behalf of the county. We typically look at flying out of CMI or Willard first and determine whether or not it's more cost-effective than flying out of a larger airport, traveling to that airport, parking at that airport, and all of those situations. So this simply documents in our travel policy that that is something that we will make a commitment to and do in the future. The second part of the changes, the one on the first page, these are all statutory and were enacted by a public act that went into effect in January of 2017, but our travel policy has never been updated to include those. So once we were touching this travel policy, realized we needed to make it comply with the public act. So on the first page, you'll see that no reimbursement of entertainment expenses is ever allowable for elected officials or officials or employees of the county. The other sections are on what's page 5 of the policy. It's under Article 6. We previously had an exception section which said what to do when there was an exception to the travel policy. It applied to everyone, and just said that it could be an exception could be approved by the Policy Personnel Appointments Committee. Well, the Public Act requires that any exceptions for employees go to the full county board. After approval, they go to the full county board. We left the structure of bringing it to policy first, following our committee structure, and they must be approved by a roll call vote of the board. And then there's an entirely new section, which is numbered Article 7, which is approval of travel expenses for members of the county board. And basically, anytime a member of the county board travels and is going to be reimbursed by the county, that travel must be specifically approved by the county board with a roll call vote. That's basically the summary of the changes, yeah.
And that's statutorily required?
That is statutorily required.
No wonder nothing gets done.
Okay, moved by Patsy. Second by Goss. Discussion, further discussion? Patsy?
Thank you. I do have some questions, but they have been somewhat modified because you've explained the statutory-driven aspects of this. One of them is in relationship to Article 6A, the exemptions. And is there any provision in case there is something that needs to be done in such a short period of time that there's not time to go to a county board and get it approved and go through roll call, other than calling a special meeting, which costs money?
Frequently, travel reimbursements are treated just as that, reimbursements. So oftentimes, the employee has already paid and is seeking reimbursement for the travel. So
Okay.
that would not be an issue in those cases. If an employee were seeking, for example, an exception upfront, it would I guess it would have to be done, or it could be done, that the employee could choose to go ahead and pay, and it would come to the body to be approved. The
Okay.
policy is fairly, we don't have much trouble with exceptions to the policy.
Okay. Is there any possibility of adding some additional words to the sentence that remains in A1? The way it reads, let me go back. The way it reads is the exemption to the above regulation shall be presented in a letter submitted. I interpreted that this had to be all set up before any travel was done. You're indicating that is not necessarily the case, that this can be submitted after travel. Is it possible to add such words that this can be presented in a letter submitted before or after travel at the end of that sentence?
Sure.
Okay, and then my second,
If you
Oh,
look at,
sorry.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to answer
Oh.
the question you just asked.
oh, okay, sorry.
If you look at Article 7BA, we could do something similar under Article 6A1.
Okay, I just think that clears up any,
That would probably be cleaner to just
Yeah.
use that language in A1 to use that language pertaining to employees. Is that
work-
okay?
Yes, that
Okay.
works very well.
Okay.
And then the second is, I'm all for us flying local, but, and you're probably calculating the cost door to door, in other words, time.
Right.
And things of that nature. You indicated that people have already been sort of putting that in unofficially into the pattern. Have there been any calculations of actually what, if it is costing the county any more money to be supportive of our local airport? Additional monies to do that rather?
I don't have any documentation on that. This would not require
No,
you
I
to spend
understand,
more.
I understand that, but I'm curious, especially since my understanding is the calculation is door to door, which makes a difference than just looking at the price of the plane ticket.
Except that we do reimburse employees for their mileage to drive
Right,
to Chicago
right.
and to park up there.
I
and for their-
understand, yeah,
And their
yeah,
time. So,
yeah.
no, I don't have any numbers to
Okay,
substantiate
all right,
that.
thank you very much.
Any further discussion, Rector?
Yeah, for those who don't know, I spent 7 years at the University of Illinois Willard Airport, so I'm really excited that there's going to be more emphasis, at least looking at it. I used to have a lot of discussions with people, and they'd spend 4, 5, 6 hours traveling, and they weren't allocating any dollars of the value of their time. So I'm excited about this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none, motion passes.
And then the final thing is just an update for the board about what we're doing this year with the employee recognition event. We've had conversations with the committee that has planned that event in the past, and we've also had this as a discussion topic at a recent department heads meeting where the department heads and elected officials were there. And it was determined that what we've done for the last several years with the lunch where only the employees who are being recognized are invited and all the department heads are invited every year was not really as effective as it could be. And we wanted something where there would be more engagement of all the employees of being recognized and appreciated on that employee recognition appreciation day. So the memo in the packet sort of spells it out. We would designate December 13th as that day. We would, instead of providing lunch, we will provide treats for all employees by sending the treats to their departments. And then each department would have a celebration within the department honoring those people who reached a five-year milestone within that year. We would also have for each of those individuals who have achieved a 5-year milestone an actual gift, which they haven't really been receiving in recent years. We've been providing them with everybody with just like a mug with a seal on it or something. What we're going to use is if you're a 5-year employee, 10-year employee, whatever, you will get a little packet that notes your years of service and has a catalog in it and a card. And the card is for you to select anything that's in that catalog, and it's already been prepaid, and you mail it, and you're going to receive whatever it is that you selected from that catalog. And the values of these gifts would start at $20 for the 5-year employees and go up to $80 for the 40-year employees. And we really think, and the department heads and elected officials really did also concur with this, think that the employees will feel a little more valued with something like that than with just everybody getting the same mug filled with candy or whatever it has been that we've been doing for the last several years. So that's kind of the overview of the day, what we would expect. We're going to invite county board members, if you want to sign up to go to a department while they're doing their event, to be there with them. Certainly that's encouraged because we always want to try and include county board members in recognizing our employees. We will also kind of change the format for the December meeting when the resolution honoring our county board members is read. We're going to encourage the employees who are being recognized to be here so that they can stand up and be acknowledged when their names are read during the resolution. And 2 other things. We recognize that these days we're hiring a lot of younger people and that they appreciate more instant gratification. And in order to, I'm sorry, that was not meant in any way, but retention is becoming an issue. And so because retention is becoming an issue, we want to start acknowledging our employees on their first anniversary. So we're going to have like a tote that has the county seal on it or something so that on your first anniversary, we're going to say, thank you for being here this year. We're really glad that you're still with us. And finally, as employees retire, we are going to do everything we can to include that in the Sunday News Gazette business section where they talk about what's happening, honoring our employees as they retire, if they have, especially if they have, 10 or more years of experience in working with the county. So that's kind of the overall what we've come up with as kind of a change in format for employee recognition. And we're on our way to implementing that, but certainly if any board members have any thoughts or ideas, we'd be happy to hear them as well.
Thank you for that background information. A lot of work. Great. 8D1. Seek to move the approval of Champaign County Board rules. Could somebody move these?
I move to approve.
Okay, Pius moves. Could I get a second? Second by Storr. Discussion? Pius?
Yes, comes from the County Executive Transition Committee, which met probably 8, 9, 10 times. I can't remember. We met quite a bit, not much recently. We do plan to have at least one more meeting. We obviously worked hard on these rules. I do want to point out that if you look on page 57, which is the table of contents, I do want the committee to bring to the board next month the order of business, which is the order of business at meetings, and we'll do that next month, not at the organizational meeting. And also, we'll also work on the responsibility and roles of the committees and bring that to the board next month, so that in December, the new board will only have to decide on the structure of the committees. They won't have to do anything else. So that's one change that's not reflected in the table of contents here. Other than that, I think that we've worked hard on that, and hopefully it'll work well. And I ask that you support it. And finally, at the county board meeting this month, it'll still be in draft form. Next month, we'll put it into a resolution, put a number on it when we add those other things to it.
Well, I have a clarification question on what you just mentioned, Chair, and that is, there's a motion to vote on this, yet there are going to be additions and changes, so what exactly are we voting on?
What you have in front of you.
Okay.
Rector?
Yeah, I request a roll call.
Lift it by the base, not by the stem.
Here, pass that one out.
Rector, next question.
I request a roll call. When we
Roll call?
vote.
Could we get a
When we
roll call
vote.
on this? Any
Second.
further comments?
Second.
Anderson?
I'm going to be inclined not to support this because I would feel more comfortable that the new board that comes after the election approve these rules in their entirety, as opposed to me having say on it and won't be here. I think it's only fair to those who will be here working under these rules that they get to vote on it. Thank you.
Okay, that was a second by Patsy, comment by Anderson. Any further discussion?
I want to point out the new board can change these rules at any time with the proper notification.
Goss, you had a question? No. Oh, okay, any further discussion? Patsy?
Well, we did talk about some of this last evening in caucus, and some of the issues and questions were good ones, so maybe we should put some of those out for the other side of the aisle to hear and offer suggestions and comments on them, and one of them being the structures set up for the approval of any appointments within the county, and that those need to come for advice and consent to the county board. And we talked about it, but there was no concrete suggested changes or adaptation to what is presented here in this packet. So I'd like to hear other people's thoughts and comments on that.
Thank you for those comments, Patsy. Pius? Do we put it off, or do we vote on it? Okay, okay, any further discussion?
Yeah, one thing I appreciate about this is the clear sort of separation of the responsibilities of the board and the executive. One place I noticed where that's not the case is in section 8 under parliamentarian. It says the board chair and the county executive may designate a parliamentarian. I understand the parliamentarian is like an advisory role, but if there's a sort of disagreement between the board and executive, I think it makes sense to sort of, can they do they each designated parliamentarian, that was sort of unfair to me.
Pius?
The county executive only presides over the county board meeting. The committee of the whole or other meetings are presided over by county board members. That's why you have both there.
Thank you.
Any, Patterson?
Some technical difficulties tonight. I discussed with Steve, we haven't really discussed in the transition committee, is something I had thought about recently, but kind of a simple change of changing the title from board chair to something else. In Will County, they refer to the leader of the board as the speaker. We had talked about maybe board president. The reason why is because I think these two positions, the board chair under executive and the board chair currently, are not the same position. And I think that by maintaining the same title, it could cause confusion. So I don't know if that's something that I could propose as an amendment. Pius, do you have any?
My suggestion is that the new board decide that. I mean, that's what I would suggest.
Chris?
Actually, I kind of like Kyle's idea because I think that for just the reasons that he stated, that it draws a distinction between the duties of what will be the former county board chair and whatever the leader of the county board might be. I think that it's as Mr. Weibel pointed out, the new board can make changes, but I think having something in place would be fitting.
Any further discussion? Furtado?
On page 62, why is, just out of curiosity, the elected and appointed crossed out in A and B? And then I have one other question. Sorry, 62.
Well, it's 60, there's several places at 62 is the other picture, because it's a gray area.
Okay.
It's one of those gray areas. And right now, I think the state attorney seems to think that it's only the elected county officers and not the appointed.
Gotcha. And then the other question I have is the county executive shall assist the board chair in the different committees. What does that mean exactly, I guess? Like, so is the county executive preparing the agenda, or is the board chair or the speaker or whatever? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, whose ultimate responsibility is it to prepare the agenda?
It is the board chair's responsibility for the agenda.
Okay.
That's clarified in other places.
Gotcha. But then what the shall assist, what does that mean?
Well, that means
you
that
think?
the administrative staff, his office will be responsible for make sure that copies are made, it's typed up. And
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
That was on page 62, item 6A1.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Great. Any further discussion? Bashir Spotty?
Yeah, so I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Anderson that the new board should set the rules. I'm wondering if we don't, set the rules, if we don't, accept something that looks sort of like this, then we'll have, on December 3rd, we'll have our meeting, we'll have a county executive, and our current rules don't apply there. So, I totally agree that the new board should set the rules, but it seems like we'll need to have something in place for that. And is that correct, or?
I couldn't answer that question in particular, but it would make sense to have something already in place, and then following that, and after the revision and review of these bylaws, and then the county board could come up with the current administrator and look at these a little closer. Patsy?
Just a clarification question now, and that is, I did attend these meetings, and I do not recall, though it may have happened outside of the meeting, have either of the candidates running for this position been asked for any input on these rules that we are writing for something that doesn't exist as of yet? And how well they see that any of these rules will work on what we're all working under, a statute that none of us that really understand completely. And I'm not willing to use Will County as our model.
Pius, could you reflect on that?
Every meeting of the committee had time for public participation. The two candidates could readily come up forward and speak if they wanted to.
Patterson.
I guess kind of take it back to Pranjal's point. I guess I have no disagreement with what Mr. Anderson brought up about the new county board setting the rules. I guess just, do we know what would happen if we don't have something in place now for the new board, as far as like how would that meeting work if there were no rules?
Well, I won't be there, so I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
Is this
But
something
if I
that-
was there, I probably would at least lose sleep over it.
Is this something that we need to refer to the state's attorney's office? It seems like we should probably figure this out.
Well, I think it's the responsibility of this county board to act in anticipation of changes, try to make those changes as smoothly as possible. I think that's our responsibility to the citizens of Champaign County.
Anderson, Jack?
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me there are state statutes that regulate the conduct and responsibilities and limitations of county boards. They'd be operating under those until they establish their own local policies, such as the ones being suggested.
Pius?
I would point out that's exactly what we did at the committee meeting. We tried to change the rules so that they would apply to the statute of the county executive.
Eisenman?
Thank
Eisenman?
you. Thanks. I'm new, and so I feel like I don't have a complete answer to Kyle's question, which I think is a great question. So I know you won't be here anymore, so you won't lose sleep, but we will. And so what will be, I know it feels like, oh, if we don't vote for this, then it's just going to be utter chaos at the next county board meeting, which that can't be true. So what would be the protocol? How would it go? Somebody surely knows the answer, right?
Well, I can't answer that. I mean, again, we changed the rules, at least my viewpoint is we did exactly what Mr. Anderson said. We tried to modify rules to fit the statute as best as we can. And again, the new county board can change those rules. They have that power. If they don't like them after the first month, they can change them at any time, following the proper procedure for doing that.
Any further questions? Anderson? Just at the end of the day, I'll repeat it. You just operate under statutes. Any new change in a county board, I mean, the statutes were put out there when counties were created. They didn't have rules and policies. They followed statutes until they established their own. This is already here as a model. I suspect that during the first meeting, this could be adopted or some form of it as a matter of procedure within the first decisions made. So it gives them a format to follow for the rest of the meeting and then change it as they see appropriate. So, but that's for that board to decide because, yeah, not even Ms. Busey will be here.
Jody? No? Patsy?
Well, I couldn't engender conversation about how things are set up and the approval of county employees, those not under the elected officials. I have a great deal of trouble with the way it's structured in these proposed rules. And there were a few comments last evening that I thought had some adaptive potential. And Steve Summers mentioned the importance of an HR person for our county, and after the meeting, went home and thought about that. And that certainly would be a neutral position for processing appointments within the county that then can be brought to the county board, and limiting the level of those appointments that come to the county. Another thing that was talked about is, does this apply just to the department heads, or are we approving the janitor? And it's not clear here of what those levels are. And another suggestion that was put on the table was, all right, they're given a budget within which to work, and that's what they have to work with. And that budget got approved as part of the budget process, and that is the way it would be handled. And I'd really like to hear other people's thoughts and comments on this. I reflect back to the county board certainly was not the appropriate entity for running the nursing home. I thought we learned a big lesson on that, so I'm not sure that putting in the hands of the county board the approval of every employee that is going to be hired within the county. Oh, there was one more, and that was maybe the provisional aspect of hiring. I don't know how long it is. Is it 6 months? All right, let's just say it's 6 months, and within that time period, then the person is brought to the county board for final approval for employment. So I really like to hear some other people's thoughts and comments on it, because that part of these rules is, I think, wrought with all kinds of complications.
Summer, Steve.
A bipartisan committee looked at those statutes that we would be operating under, and we met for at least 8 meetings to try and come up with this document. So to answer Ms. Eisman's question about if there would be chaos, if it took us 8 meetings to come up and work this out, the idea that a new board is going to come in and be able to look at the statute and put it together in one meeting, I think is unlikely.
Patterson.
Yeah, there is a state statute that does lay out, some of the guidelines of county executive, but a state statute is not a set of rules. This is general roles and responsibilities of from the day-to-day to, the big picture aspects of how this is structured, but that is not the same as a set of rules. Any of you, I encourage you to, the statute's only, I actually have it right here, it's only 6 pages, to read the statute and then read the rules that are proposed and see that the statute does not give guidelines on how things are set up, on how, in our rules, we have, Robert's Rules of Order are the rules for a meeting. There's just a lot of aspects that don't translate from the statute into the decisions that we do have control of. And I do think that if we don't have anything on the books, then there's not going to be any rules for that meeting. And I'm not an attorney, so I think that the responsible thing for us to do would be to ask the state's attorney. I don't even know how many inquiries we had to make with the state's attorney during the committee process. As Steve said, there's many meetings. There's times where it was, we had an inquiry to the state's attorney, and it wasn't even the next meeting. They didn't even have the answer yet. So the idea that a new board would come in and at that meeting, that first meeting, be able to do what we did in however many meetings that was, I just think that there's a lot of moving parts here, and we should really be mindful of that. And as Pi said, on day one, they can vote to change the rules. I definitely don't disagree with that principle. I just worry that if we are going to make a decision to not have rules in place, I'd be much more comfortable if we got an opinion from the state's attorney's office saying that that's something that we could do.
Anderson?
I don't believe that this will end up on the consent calendar for next meeting. So I suggest that we move forward with a roll call vote and then give direction to staff to have the state's attorney's office advise what would happen if it did not pass at the next meeting. And if the new board were to come in with no established rules. Thank you.
Pius?
I'd like to respond to Mrs. Petrie's comments. I think she's mostly talking about item F on page 63. That'd be 6F. Says the county executive shall appoint with advice and consent of the board employees, appointees, subordinate deputies. That is taken from the state, that's from the state statute. The question is, how can that be applied? Because the county board only meets once a month. And say you get an employee you want to hire right away. So some discussions, well, at our caucus, maybe that person could be hired, and then by the department chair or whoever's doing the hiring, and then they'd start working, but it'd be formalized by a vote by the county board. This actually occurs in RPC, where all the early Head Start hirings have to go through the policy committee, which sometimes meets a couple weeks, sometimes a month later after the person's actually working. But it is something that we have to do according to the federal guidelines for that. Trying to think, was there something else? Oh, well, of course, you also have to have money to pay the person. If you don't have the money, obviously, I think you'd be breaking federal contract law. So certainly money is an inhibiting factor on how many people you can hire and what they pay. So that's a factor also.
That's just Patty?
Sorry, I think this sort of got lost. So is the plan that we're going to approve this, but obviously there's holes in it, like the agenda section. So is the plan that we're going to vote on this now and then we'll vote on an amended version at the county board meeting, or that we'll bring this up at a future, those changes?
Those should be voted on again at the county board meeting. And then next month we will add material to it. I suppose we could bring the whole thing up again if we want to. I'd have to check to see the best way of doing that.
So I mean, I guess I appreciate being able to see all this stuff now, but I am still a little confused as to why we're voting on it now instead of when we have the whole thing in front of us.
We had a lot of work on it, we just couldn't get it all done in time. Okay. So and part of it was the committee structure should be decided by the next county board too. So it's just a lot of stuff. I figured this stuff we got through and sort of try not get too confused by it, perhaps. Again, next month I plan to add those two other sections, and then we'll actually put a real resolution on it too. So I get you'll see this again next month with the additions. But I'd like to move on this month.
Patsy?
Well, I do want to point out that RPC does work through an HR person, and so again, I'd like to see that being given some consideration. We've all talked about the need for an HR person for the county, and this would certainly be a good way. In the end, I may support these, but right now I'm not comfortable supporting them. There are too many things that I don't think are well thought out. And a secondary thought, what prevents us from just passing this document on to the next board? It gives them a leg up and they can vote on it and take it from that point on. All this work and everything has been done, but I'm still very perplexed why we're sitting here passing the rules for the next board that's going to come in on a very different structure, of which admittedly none of us really understand. And as I said, I'm not using Will County as my model. They've been a mess for 25 years with the way they've been doing it. And I'm just not comfortable right at this moment telling the next board what they're going to do, and the excuse that I'm hearing that, oh, the next board then can change everything. So why do we do this now? And then the next board comes along and changes everything.
Pius?
It's called planning.
Rector?
Very, very well said. I agree. I will not support this either.
Just
Stephanie?
real quick, Will County is the only other county that has this setup. So if we're not using Will County as a model, I'm a little unclear of where that model of language and stuff would be coming from. There's not, unless, I don't know.
Patsy?
Will County, we're not like Will County, so to try to emulate Will County is an impossibility. And why aren't we doing our own? I said that last night. We should be developing our own model if other counties then determine they want to follow along. What Will County has stumbled through for 2.5 decades it's been painful for them, and it still isn't working. When folks went up and talked to Will County, they said, we're looking for you meaning Champaign County, to figure out how to do this better. So to sit here and say we're going to emulate Will County does not bode well.
Kyle?
I guess I just want to clarify, the process in which we, in a general sense, made the rules was by looking at the existing county board rules and applying the model laid out by the statute. So you're discussing that we modeled this off of Will County. I just don't, yeah, I mean, we looked at Will County, but as far as actually, I mean, really, we based it off of our existing rules. I mean, that probably was that was the foundation of the rules, was the existing county board rules.
Any further discussion before we take a roll call? Jody?
I just want to say thank you, gentlemen, for like all of the hours that you put in at the meetings, but I don't feel like I can confidently vote for it because I feel like I would like to do more research and read the statutes versus these, because I am coming in brand new and I want to be confident in my vote. So, but thank you for your time, and I'm really sorry. And my one vote probably won't matter, but thank you.
Any further comments, discussions, questions for Pius? Yeah, I too don't feel very comfortable in supporting this, and I don't think that we're at a loss at day one, Jody, because there will be 12 existing board members 11 out of the 22. We're not losing the entire board, we're losing half of the board. And I don't know who's actually, as a head count, is not going to be here for December 1 meeting, but there is also a interim vice chair, which means that as an interim basis, I could serve as chair or president until this board selects the president of the board.
Point of order?
Yes.
Once the term ends, there's no vice chair at the end of November.
Okay. I guess that's that. Okay, let's have a roll call.
Summers? Yes. Bachapati?
Yes.
Weibel?
Yes.
Anderson? No. Clifford? No. Cowart? Douglas?
Yes.
Eisenman?
No.
Esri?
No.
Furtado?
Yes.
Goss?
No.
McGuire? Patterson? Petrie?
No.
Rector? No. Rosales?
No.
Store?
The motion failed. Oh, sorry. 98. You got to see that.
What was that?
98 failed.
Okay, motion fails. So what do we do at this point?
Move on to the next item.
Kyle?
I guess before we move on, I mean, for those who did oppose the vote tonight, I mean, what is the plan? Didn't hear a lot of discussion other than the next board should just choose. I mean, what's the next step now? Are we asking the state's attorney, or what are we doing?
I believe the next county board's going to have to deal with this.
Okay, for information and information only, you have the yellow sheet, canary sheet here, which is 8D2, information on the county board memberships, statewide county organizations. Pius?
Yes, I brought to you because if you read the memo, there's a new statewide organization that's formed called the, sorry, what's it called here? The Illinois State Association of Counties. We currently belong to the Illinois Association of County Members and also to the UCCI. There's overlap, but they do provide lobbying efforts for lots of efforts that occur in Springfield for us. We also get services through both of them, the deferred compensation plan and also the workman's comp insurance. One thing I want to add is that the UCCI generally does rebate the cost of our membership back to us on an annual basis, and they also pay for some of the hotel expenses at some of the meetings that I attend to. They tend to pay like 2/3 or 3/4 of those a room for that. The question is there any interest at all in joining this third organization or not? So I mean, I'm not asking you to make a decision. I guess we won't decide about tonight. It's just for discussion. The question is, do we want to join this new organization? Go ahead.
Anderson?
I would think that we would invite a representative from this organization to speak before the board, to speak of the benefits to us, because I'm not sure what they are. They don't seem to be spelled out well enough for me to comprehend. But if they can make a good enough sales speech on why we should.
I could ask Mr. Zimmerman, the chair of the Tazewell County, to come over if you want me to do that.
Well, I would prefer just so we could make an informed decision.
Any further discussion on that information? Patsy?
I appreciate Mr. Anderson's suggestion, quite frankly, because one of the things that's troubled me on an increasing level with our very tight budget is that we are spending monies for these various organizations. And it's never been clear to me in dollars and cents if this is the most efficient way for us to be spending our money from two perspectives. One perspective is this the best way to leverage lobbying for our own county, Champaign County? And the second is, would these monies be better spent in smaller increments for county board members to have the opportunity to attend conferences or other educational opportunities? And the only organization when I was chair, and this one, of course, didn't exist, was UCCI, which did do some legal research. We have access to the state's attorney's office, but you did learn a bit from other counties and their questions they submitted to the attorneys at UCCI, and we could learn things that are happening in other counties and some of the legal aspects of it. Nothing is included in here in the amount that we pay to belong to NACO. And when we decided, after not being in NACO for a number of years because of the cost of membership in NACO, we did rejoin when I was chair, and the reason we rejoined was because NACO gave us a hook, and that is they reduced the membership quite significantly. And that was the last time any county board members had any opportunity to attend a conference. And that was a national conference, and 3 county board members did attend that. And this is not a discussion we have had at all within the county board. Are these the best ways for us to spend this money for this county and these board members, to give them opportunities to learn about what other counties are doing, and maybe their best practices out there that we don't know about and that we don't get exposed to them. So I really do want more information before I'm willing to commit more money, because right now we are talking about, well, the money comes back from UCCI, so most of that is moot. So you have $1,700, $8,500, And right now, NACO is a little over 4,000, but that's being split with the Mental Health Board, and I don't know how long the Mental Health Board will continue along that line, but we're already up to almost $12,000 of expenditure for this kind of activity. And we really should be thinking about how do we best leverage that amount of money.
I just wish to point out that I'm not suggesting we join this new organization. I just want to present that data to you. In fact, I don't think we should, but.
Any further discussion? Goss?
Yeah, I would concur with Mr. Anderson. I think we ought to at least have him give a presentation. Otherwise, we really don't know much more than what's in writing, which is a little weak, to be honest. So thank you.
Any further comments? Okay, you have an addendum in blue, item 8D3, County Board of Health. This we sort of grappled with on the last county board meeting. I believe it went back. Did they reconvene and meet, Pius?
This is a County Board of Health. I'm not familiar with what they did.
They met last week. They approved the change to the contract that the county board changing it to 5 years. But when the county board adopted the contract, you had a different appendix. And the staff at CUPHD felt the county board needs to approve the appropriate appendix, which is the document that you have before you this evening that attaches to the contract that you've already approved.
Great. Could I get someone to move for approval?
I'll move that.
Moved by Pius, second by Storr. Discussion? Anderson?
Is there anybody here from County Board of Health or questions?
The liaison, Mr. Clemens, I did ask him to come or have him send somebody here. Apparently that did not happen. I did not get a response from him either, though.
Furtado?
Why did we not have the correct appendix? Do we know?
Jody?
Hi, I have a question, and I actually asked them when they were here during the budget meeting for more information under item section 2, letter D, about the teen pregnancy and sexually transmitted disease prevention education in the Champaign County schools with students less than 40% minority. I have lots of questions, and I wish that someone would come and could answer them for me, because here's where I stand. I have 2 junior high students, and they're at Mahomet, so that would be one of the schools that would qualify for this. We currently have a health program already in place for 6 weeks out of the year. Instead of going to PE, they have 6 weeks of health education, which involves sexually transmitted diseases and all of that situation. And so my question would be, or my stance is, this isn't up for a county board or the public health to decide. Like, this is local school boards to make this decision of what their students are being taught. Because I truly, as a teacher, I don't know where you're going to get the extra time to even allow somebody to come in. And I asked them, who's going to teach this to the students? What's the curriculum? What's it look like? And they haven't even come back to talk to us about all of our questions. We've had several of them. But this one, I really feel like this is a school board decision, not a county board decision. Because Mahomet, I know parents, lots of parents there, and what's taught in the health classes, the teachers show that at the orientation at the beginning of the school year. We can go through the health books and see what's going to be taught. So if this is now going to be taught by the county or the health department, those parents are going to have a problem with it, and I have a problem with it. So I wouldn't want, that's up to the local school board and the parents to decide. So I would move for removing that from the, I don't know how that works, but.
I'll try to respond to that. I mean, Muhammad won't be part of the program because they don't have 40% minority population.
It's less than 40% minority students. So it would be Fisher, Mahomet.
Less than 40%.
Gifford.
Okay. I also know that the schools are inviting the services.
I would second her motion to remove it.
Okay, we have an addendum or a change on that in a second. Discussion on the second motion.
So,
for title?
so just out of clarification on all of these things, the tobacco enforcement, the tobacco-free communities, the teen pregnancy, the child dental services, none of these are mandated, correct? That the schools participate in them? This just has the opportunity for the schools, or am I not understanding this?
I don't know the answer to that, but when we were told that this had to be on the agenda tonight, I specifically requested that someone be here tonight, and they were unable to be at this meeting. Rather than changing this document that has already been approved by the County Board of Health because there are questions about it, I would request that this board consider either forwarding it to the board without recommendation, with the knowledge that someone will be here who can answer the questions before you change a document that's already been approved by another body that's party to it, or that you ask that it be deferred to your November meeting, so that you can get the answers to the questions.
Because
There's been a motion and a second.
Yeah, I'm discussing that. Because I guess maybe I just misunderstood this. I just read all of these as optional, not mandated, that these would be services that the board would be providing that schools could opt into. But maybe, if that's not the case, then maybe I just fundamentally misunderstand the relationship between the board and the schools.
Patsy?
Ms. Busey has, I think, a very good suggestion, and maybe the last opportunity for those folks to find somebody who can come here and answer our questions. We made it very clear last month. I thought it was really clear that we were not happy that they couldn't find appropriate people to come. No cover memo, no nothing. We still don't have a cover memo. And I wonder if, I'm sorry, I don't remember who made the original motion on this, if they would be willing to withdraw their motions so that we could table this until the county board meeting in October.
Kyle?
I guess I want to first say I'm very frustrated that there is not somebody here. It seems like this has been a recurring problem. Kind of feels like Groundhog's Day with this board, as far as them not setting anybody to answer these questions. I think there's definitely a lot of questions, and I hear your concerns, and it seems like we don't have the answer to a lot of the questions that are at hand. So I think we should go with Ms. Busey's advice, and rather than taking an up or down vote, I think that on the total motion, we should vote to either send to the whole board without recommendation or defer till November.
Well, we have we moved the addendum, the motion, to take it off, and we have a second on that, so we have to vote on that before we go back to the original motion to go ahead and approve this.
Yes, I'd like to speak a little bit to some of the discussion that's been made. I have a real problem with, we've asked them originally during the budget. We have this whole discussion going on. We ask them over and over again to come and discuss these issues. We can't properly discuss the issues, not even to the issue that Stephanie brought up about whether these are something that are mandated or required. We can't ask any of those questions. We asked, Bradley probably asked if there's someone could come. We asked if someone could, sounds like the minister, Debussy asked for someone to come from the health board to come and speak to these issues. They don't show up. They don't show up. They dropped the document on us last time and said that, okay, you have to take it or leave it, and we were forced to return it to them with amendment because of what it is. Now we got this document the last minute because the appendix was wrong, and we're asked again to vote on it and send it back to them, and we're just forced to take it. I don't understand why we're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for the health department that doesn't seem to care whether they show up and talk to us, but yet, okay, we should just wait for another month and decide what we're going to do, because we have to kowtow to whatever they want. What is the answers? I mean, when will they come and provide the service that we're paying for?
Further discussion, Pius?
I just want to point out, these are changes that the County Board of Health wanted in the addendum. And so we're asking members of the County Board of Health to come to us to tell us why they want that. It's not the health district, it's the County Board of Health. They're the ones that are not responding.
Further questions? Before we continue to move forward, we should vote on this proposed changes that Jody indicated. We could either vote that up or down, and then after we complete that, we could go back to adding a different motion to go ahead and leave it as is, if it passes or if it fails, depending, correct? Or defer? Anderson?
I would just ask for clarification on what we're voting for first.
Okay, Jody made a motion. Jody, you want to repeat that?
I just would like to see letter D removed from this addendum
In its entirety.
in its entirety. D, and then small letter A.
And we have we have moved it, and we have a second on that. Stephanie?
I have another comment on that. I completely understand. I feel like reading this more closely, it veers between generalities and specificity in ways I don't understand. And the same issue that you're referring to in D is also present in A, but for the opposite, for schools with at least 40% minority. And so I understand your concern, but I don't understand why we would just address this one letter and not all of the letters. So for me, deferring it, the whole thing, until somebody could come and answer those questions makes more sense, because like I can't even tell from this if AC is also what it's referring to in D as the specific schools, but then why aren't there specific schools in DA? You know what I'm saying? So like I hear your concerns, but I don't think just taking D out actually addresses it. I think what we need to do is, my suggestion would be if I think this is allowed, if you withdraw that vote, withdraw that recommendation, and then we vote to defer the whole thing, because there might be, you know, parents from schools that would apply to that section that would also like that addressed, and it just seems like we're just focusing on one like specific thing where maybe we have questions about the whole document. Because the more I read this, the more I don't understand it. Because there's a lot of places where it says can, and then there's places where it says list specific things, and I don't really understand how those two work together. So that's just my only concern about taking out just the D.
So both Jim and Jody, would you be against to withdraw that motion that you all put out, removing all of D? Taking that into consideration?
We can still vote on this and we can vote on the amendment and then vote on the other and defer even after we do the amendment.
Okay, so I agree. Let's go ahead and vote on that, and you could either vote it up or down on the removal of D, and then if it doesn't pass, and then we'll go back to the original motion. Jim?
Roll call.
Okay, could I have a roll call?
Summers. Vachaspati. Weibel.
No.
Anderson. Clifford. Cowart. Douglas. Eisenman.
Yes.
Esri.
Yes.
Furtado.
No.
Goss. McGuire. Patterson. Petrie.
No.
Rector. Store. And Rosales.
No.
12-5 failed.
Okay, so now we go to the original motion. Could we propose perhaps to defer? What was that?
Okay, I
Mr.
vote,
Gonzalez?
my motion to defer.
Okay, second.
Okay, we got a move on that and a second by Stefano.
Clarification, clarification, Mr. Dwyer, defer to the county board meeting without action or defer to next month?
Next month.
So do
Thank
we
you.
need a roll call, or we could just go ahead and, no? Just a regular up and down vote? Okay. All those in,
I'm so sorry. Just a point of clarification. We already voted on the whole thing, so that vote still is,
no, we haven't.
yes, we did last, oh, we voted,
It
yeah,
was,
with the amendment. So we have the whole thing with just the wrong amendment that we've already voted on. So that's still in place until, okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that correctly.
to defer for next month. Any further discussion? To defer.
Point of order, so we voted on that amendment. That amendment failed. Now the motion is to defer.
I thought somebody made a motion for the document. Jody then amended that motion with what she wanted to accomplish. That got voted down. We still have a motion on the floor to vote up or down on the document.
That motion is being deferred, which has precedence. I'm sorry, no, you're wrong. You can defer a motion at any time. No, I'm sorry, you can defer. Check the rules of precedence.
Okay, we're just going to take a not hands up, but a regular vote on deferring until next month as proposed by Jim McGuire. Jim?
Should follow the same process, Cow and then full board.
Okay, Cow
And I
and
think
County
the two
Board.
questions should be what Stephanie talked about. One is, what is section 2A and C? 2A, I think, is a question about what all these items, how they all are presented in the county board. Yeah.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great, it's been deferred. That was easy. Okay, now we're back to 8E. 8E, Chair's Report. County Board appointments expiring November 30th, 2018. For information only, Public Aid Appeals Committee, Senior Service Advisory Committee, Zoning Board of Appeals. Items to be placed on the consent agenda are A1, correct me if I'm wrong, no? A1 and 2, no? C? A2. A2, yes? Yes. Okay, that's A2, C2, and 3. They go to finance, sorry. Oh, okay, okay, they go to finance. So let me start again. A2, there is no C? C4. C4, because C2 and 3 go to finance, and then D3? D is in David, D3? No? Okay, you have him.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rosales. Next is finance, Ms. Furtado.
All right, sorry. Budget transfer 18-0005, Fund 080, General Corporate Department 141, State's Attorney Support Enforcement, total amount $3,000. Have a motion? Mr. Esri, Ms. Petrie, second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Budget Amendment 18-00056, Fund 619, Tax Sale Automation Department 026, County Treasurer, increased appropriations $2,338, increased revenue none from fund balance. Do I have a motion? Mr. Patterson, second by Mr. Goss. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries. And now we're going to hear from our treasurer. It was on. We took too long. Gave up.
Well, while this is booting up, I'll tell you about collections. We are 98.28% collected for the year on taxes. That's a little bit over $350 million that have been distributed to the taxing bodies within Champaign County. So that's right on par where we want to be. It's a little bit ahead of where we were 2 years ago. It's just slightly behind where we were last year. So it's right on track because our tax sale is actually a week later this year. We expect that we will collect over 99% of all the property taxes in the county, which is excellent. Also, with our last distribution, the last week of September, the nursing home paid off its tax anticipation warrant, so that has been satisfied with Hickory Point Bank. And then the nursing home was able to actually receive about $137,000 off of that last distribution that was above and beyond what was owed on the note. So that helped them. The nursing home honestly is cutting it close for payroll right now, but I just got notice of a payment coming in from one of their providers that will put them into the clear for payroll this week, and they're continuing to work on accounts payable for Friday. So I think they should be fine, but payroll will be taken care of. They were right at the average today.
As you looked ahead to the next pay period in October, do you anticipate things being okay, or will it be a bit tight?
It should be.
All right,
It should
thank
be.
you.
Mhm. All right. Here we're looking at our September numbers. September for the general corporate fund, as you can see, we ended the month of September with a little over $7.8 million in the fund balance. As that translates out for the rest of the year using our averages, and I'm sorry the computer is being slow, but eventually I'll move over here for you. There we go. We're showing a fund balance at the end of the year at 6.024. Boy, I just can't win. $6.024 million at the end of December, which is in line with where we expect things to be. The numbers from September, quite honestly, accounts payable was a little bit low compared to previous months, so that adds to our cash because we're looking at strictly at cash that we have on hand. So we will see how things go through the rest of the year. As you can see, all of our various, the $1 million is paid back to public safety sales tax, the $3.24 million that's down here, that's what our distribution in September was. We don't do a distribution in October. We do the tax sale on October the 26th, and then we'll have our final distribution in November, and that's where we'll do all the catch-up at the end of the tax season for revenue year 2017 payable in 2018. Also, just to let you know about on the tax sale, we mailed out about 2,100, here I'm making that larger for you. We mailed out about 2,100 certified letters today. So that's how many out of 77,000 parcels in the county, there's 2,100 that have something that remains to be paid, whether it be one installment or both installments on their property taxes. 2 weeks ago, when it was the cutoff for paying with a personal check, we were at about 5,400. So in about 2 weeks, we've had that many people pay, and we expect to see around 1,000 parcels in the tax sale, which is actually a pretty good number. It's lower than it's been in past years. So just following those trends. People here in Champaign County pay their taxes, and they try to get it done before the end of October. So it's something we should be proud of. Yeah, Mr. Gauss.
Yeah, can you help us? I can't see what that 425 is.
The 425 is the debt service at the end of the year. We do our debt payments in July and December. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, I'm going to move, resolution authorizing disbursement of funds on defaulted contract for mobile home tax sale, permanent parcel 30-064-0115. Mr. Goss, do I have a second? Ms. Petrie, discussion. Anything you want to say about this?
From time to time, the tax agent allows folks to make payments on property. And in this situation, folks started a payment process and then they stopped, and we are unable to locate them to continue the process. So at this point, they just forfeit the money that they paid towards us. Some goes to the tax agent, some comes to us to be dispersed amongst the taxing districts, and that'll go back into the surplus sale.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. We will place the auditor's report on file, but if anybody has any questions, or we have the opportunity to engage. All right. Seeing none, thank you. Thank you for being here and sticking with us. We're going to move to the county clerk. Request approval for Illinois State Board of Elections Cyber Navigator Program Certification of Participation. Mr. Rector, do I have a second? I saw Ms. Cowart. Any questions or discussion on this? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries. The next is request approval for Help America Vote Act, HAVA Election Security Grant Acceptance Agreement. I did want to point out that you have an additional information memo in your yellow packet that spells out that we are eligible for $40,392 of these funds. Do I have a motion? Start Mr. Patterson, Ms. Cowart second. Discussion. Yes.
Could the clerk elaborate a little bit about what the additional security would be?
Thank you. The federal government, with some publicity earlier this year, appropriated a significant amount of money to be passed to states for election cybersecurity related improvements in the wake of the 2016 election. Illinois received a little bit more than $13 million. Our expectation was that the State Board of Elections was going to keep all of that money. And it was a little bit of a surprise a couple of weeks ago when the State Board of Elections sent us a notice that we were eligible for up to $40,000 and change in grant funds. Right now, we have nothing more than a preliminary wish list that's been prepared by our office and the county IT department. The sorts of things for which we are eligible to be reimbursed are not the typical things that we would do in terms of election administration. They're hardware and software that are specifically related to security and network security issues. Right now, we don't have a plan for what we're going to submit to the State Board of Elections for reimbursement, but adopting these two agreements tonight makes us eligible to seek reimbursement in the future for the expenditures that we have that might be eligible. I expect that the next county clerk will actually make the decisions about what to acquire in conjunction with the IT director and then seek reimbursement next year.
I have a question, or Mr. Storr, did you have any follow-up questions? So next year then, we would need to appropriate into the budget whatever that dollar amount is that we'd be coming back. So this has not been appropriated in your budget?
No, this was a surprise that came a couple of weeks ago. The grant acceptance agreement needs to be adopted by our board and sent to the State Board of Elections by the end of this year in order for us to be eligible for reimbursement for purchases, I believe, through July of 2020.
Mrs. Storr.
Hi. With the security that was purchased because of the problem that we had this past summer, will that provide any additional security for us?
If you're talking about the issue that was had at the courthouse, no. It's hard for us to make the argument that courthouse security for the justice system is related to election cybersecurity.
I thought that big IT purchase for security would cover larger than more than just the courthouse. Was I wrong?
That's correct. What IT has purchased will provide security for all of the county's IT infrastructure,
Okay.
specific to that problem and not related to election.
Yeah.
Correct.
And also, though, wouldn't that predate the acceptance? So
Correct.
that would probably not, okay. Mr. Sorry, I wanted to pronounce your last name correct. Mr. Vashpati? Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe you could elaborate a little bit about what security means in this context. Are we talking like network security for your, internal network? Are we talking like security of ballots, or maybe you could sort of, you said you have sort of a wish list in your head of what this.
I don't know. I expect the next county clerk will work with the IT director to decide what expenses, what improvements to make to the network in order to further protect the network for election cybersecurity purposes in the context of what potential reimbursements would be eligible through this grant.
So this is specifically for network security and cybersecurity?
Yes, for security related to our voter registration database and the network connection that we maintain on a persistent basis to the State Board of Elections.
Okay, because our voting machines are not networked.
Correct. Again, we have two systems. One is our voter registration system. It is networked persistently to the State Board of Elections and is therefore vulnerable to hacking. That's where the State Board of Elections was attacked in 2016. That's where the State Board of Elections is intending for us to make cybersecurity improvements in terms of software and hardware. The voting systems, the ballots, the machines that count the ballots themselves are never connected to the internet and therefore significantly more protected from hacking than the voter registration system.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Petrie?
Just so I'm clear, by voting on this, and if it passes, it lays the groundwork for then a detailed submission of getting funding. Is that correct?
What I would anticipate is the next county clerk and the IT director would work together to identify purchases that both would agree to improve our network security related to our voter registration system, and the purchases that are done that would be eligible for reimbursement to the State Board of Elections would then be submitted to the State Board of Elections. We would get a check back from the State Board of Elections. So sometime in 2019 or 2020, the county board will need to do an appropriation for revenue and expenditure for those election security related expenditures.
But our vote opens the door for this to happen.
If we don't approve this by the end of the year, we're not eligible for the
Yeah,
$40,000 and leaving it on the table for another jurisdiction to have.
Any other questions? Mr.
Which I understand that this is a decision that will be made by the next clerk. And all the possibilities are hypothetical, but do you think that this grant will cover the expenses necessary, or do you think that we'll wind up having to contribute to an investment like this?
I am reasonably confident in our current network security setup as it relates to our voter registration system. However, I think that we're always discovering new threats, and it's always a good idea to be up to date and state of the art in terms of the vigilance. And that's a decision, honestly, I want to leave for the decision makers at that time.
Just as a follow-up to that, you still have a fairly healthy technology fund though too, right? So would some of that money be, if there was something that was, cost $50,000, that fund could also help support it?
Potentially, but again, that's not going to be my decision. I'm also happy to take any other election-related questions, given that we're 4 weeks from Election Day today, and sometimes you have other ancillary issues that you'd like addressed, if there are any.
Can I just make the suggestion we vote on this, and then if you would.
Absolutely, it's your meeting.
All right, so any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, seeing none, that.
Anything else for me?
Anything else for the clerk while we have him here? Mr. Vashpati?
Sorry, this is still sort of germane to this. Have you, gotten an audit of the network security and, or something like that, or?
So I am not as technologically savvy as you, so forgive me if I don't use the right vocabulary. We are now a full participant in MS ISAC, the state's election infrastructure security consortium, which includes the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the State Police, State Board of Elections, and we are participating in weekly security scans of our outward-facing servers and PCs, and the traffic between us and the State Board of Elections is being monitored regularly. We have not tripped any sort of alerts as to our voter registration system or any vulnerabilities there. We did have a weird experience Friday, of a dummy Twitter account that was set up. It scraped my photograph and my profile off of my Twitter account, and it was set up to be a clone of my Twitter account. There were no tweets posted to it yet, but it had acquired 80 followers and was following 1,000 accounts, and I suspect it was either somebody just causing mischief or it was somebody setting up an account to eventually use for spreading misinformation related to the election process. So that's the strangest thing that I've seen this year. Twitter took it down immediately. We alerted the FBI, Department of Homeland Security. It seems like a really silly thing to alert the FBI about, but they take it all very seriously and send an alert out to every other election authority in the state. So, and for all I know, it was just somebody messing with me. So.
Anything else? Thank you. Next up, County Administrator, we're going to hear the fiscal year 2018 General Corporate Fund Budget Projection and Budget Change Reports. And those are in your yellow packet.
This report is for the period ending September 2018. And on the revenue report, under non-business licenses and permits, with this report, I am further increasing the projection for revenue stamp revenues. I had a conversation with the recorder's office today. The initial budget for revenue stamps was $1.4 million, and I had been projecting about $1.6 million in revenues, but after discussion with Mr. Sheldon today, am increasing that to $1.73 million. Now that is in conjunction with some other revenues that are posted to this non-business licenses and permits line, so you can see the projection's actually $1.85 million. Per Mr. Sheldon, a large driving factor to this increase in revenue is due to large commercial transactions, and revenue stamps revenues are generated per $1.50 of every $1,000 in sales price. He had mentioned last week that there was a significant transaction of $46 million. So several large commercial transactions have added to the projection for revenues in this line. That will also translate to an increase in expenditure, as the county has to distribute 67% of what it collects in revenues stamps to the state. As I have been stating for several months, there is strong growth in the county's sales tax revenues, and that continues with this report. And also, I had mentioned last month, under local government revenue, the additional TIF disbursement that the county was not expecting from the city of Champaign. So that increase is reflected here. Regarding fees and fines, for general government fees, it appears that with the September year-to-date report, that fees have somewhat leveled out compared to fiscal year-to-date 2017. However, fines revenues continue to reflect increased growth over prior fiscal year-to-date revenues. I did try to contact the circuit clerk's office to get a little bit more information today. I know with September, there was a significant deposit made, but that was about $109,000, and that's larger than what we see in any month. So I will hopefully have some information regarding that with the next report. And so for the fiscal year 2018 revenue projection, you can see $37.25 million is where the projection sits at this point, which is very close to the 2018 budget number, even though the county did not receive the additional property tax revenue that it had included in the budget. That was about $474,000. So revenues are coming in pretty strong on the county's behalf. With the, sorry.
I'm glad you're going to double check with the circuit clerk, because my memory was that she was talking about the amount they were receiving on Pines was on a downward curve, so maybe this is just an anomaly, and a lot came in at a certain time. Wasn't it when they gave the chance to pay off fees without paying the interest on them? Would that have caused some of this big bump?
The amnesty program,
Amnesty, yeah.
so that just happened, I believe, last weekend. And so
It wouldn't be on the
Sorry.
report yet.
Yeah,
Amnesty Week was in September. It was the expungement.
Oh,
fair that
expungement was
weekend.
last.
So
Yeah,
Amnesty Week
so-
was in September.
So maybe that is some of what might have
possibly.
caused that.
I know last year that revenue was posted to past due court fines, and I did not see that posting in the September report. So again,
Just ask the question, let us know.
Yes.
Thanks.
Mr. Anderson had a question.
Sorry.
Just briefly under the revenue report, I try to invest my personal funds as best I can, but I'm reading here where under interest earnings, we have a five-fold increase, just about. What changed, and where might I invest my money?
Well, you would have to ask the treasurer that question. But when we prepared the 2018 budget, interest amounts were lower at that point, and I know they have been increasing tremendously. So we have made that correction with the 2019 budget to reflect that the county will anticipate larger interest income revenues. But in terms of investment, that's not my job. On the expenditure report, the purchase document stamp line is what I was referring to earlier when I said that the increased stamp revenues would translate to an increase in expenditure. And so the Recorder's Office will be requesting a budget amendment at the county board meeting in order to increase the appropriation to disperse the amount that's owed to the state based on the increased revenue. Also, under the 2 nursing home fund line, you can see the budget variance is $418,474. The budget was prepared with $0 to go to the nursing home. This $418,000 represents the transfers that have been made year to date, and also the forgiveness of the nursing home boiler loan that the county board approved last month. On the summary page, the revenue to expenditure difference projection is $876,000 with a fund balance projection at the end of the fiscal year of $5.435 million, and that translates to 14.9% fund balance. That is greater than the county's minimum fund balance of 12.5%, yet not at our target fund balance of 16.7%. I will remind the county board that there are still 2 outstanding nursing home loans that are in the total amount of $500,000. Those are due in December of this year. So the board will need to consider those loans either in November or December. And the ending fund balance as a percentage of the budget with forgiveness of those loans is 13.4% as of the projected report this month. On the budget change report, the new line was the forgiveness of the nursing home loan for the boiler system. That was added as of September.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Next, recommendation to the county board to receive and place on file the fiscal year 2019 tentative budget. Mr. Gauss, do I have a second? Mr. Esri, discussion. I just, again, want to thank the staff for all the work that they put into this, getting us this far in the process. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you to Policy and Personnel for forwarding these next two. Job Content Evaluation Committee recommendation for planner position and Planning and Zoning Department. This is the item we just voted on recently. Mr. Esri moved. Second? Ms. Petrie, second. Do I have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Job Content Evaluation Committee recommendation for Office Manager Accountant position for Highway Department. Do I have a motion? Mr. Storr, second. Mr. Summers. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. And just to remind you, we've pulled number 5 off of this agenda earlier. Any other business? Chair's report, I wanted to take a moment to thank Mr. Tinsley, Ms. Petrie, Ms. Douglas, and Mr. Mitchell for taking the time and talking with me about the budget process and hearing. I want to assure you, I've let staff know what our conversations were. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And Mr. Storr, thank you for not only meeting with me, but also bringing me to meet with people in your district. So that was really helpful for me to get a more robust understanding of the budget. So thank you for that. Not everything that we discussed obviously got reflected in the budget, but I do assure you that I did pass it all along, and that's been a conversation that we've had. So thank you for that. That's all I've got. So items for the chair's for the consent agenda are Finance A1, A2, B3, D1 and 2, E2, 3, and 4.
Thank you, Ms. Furtado. Is there any other business? Seeing none, we're adjourned.